You are listening to the Young Black Travelers Podcast, Black voices conversing on experiential travel, dedicated to creating a global community of travelers. Be bold, be inspired, be spontaneous. We are YBT.
So, welcome, travelers. Welcome to another episode of the Young Black Travelers Podcast. So, most of you know who I am. Again, my name is Asshur Cunningham. And for those of you who will be watching this recording, you see a face, a new face, like we do on all of our podcast recordings. So I'm going to have him introduce himself to you. Go ahead.
Yes. So my name is Jamaal Pantuflet, but I go by J London on my Instagram, Jamaal P. By the way, just to explain the London part, when I moved to New York from Amsterdam, people thought for some reason Amsterdam was in London. So that's how I got the name. And
No.
I'm like, no, they're next to each other, but it's not in London. But that's how I developed that name, Jamaal London. It's
Oh, oh, wow. That is an interesting fact to know. Oh, they were New Yorkers who thought that, right?
Yeah, a lot of them actually. I was like, oh, where are you getting this? They're two different cities, but I like the name Jamaal London.
Jamaal London. So you pronounce your name Jamaal Pamphlet.
Pantoflet. Yes, it's French.
Pamphlet.
Yeah, my
It's
grandfather is French.
It's French. Wow. So, we're gonna get into it. So you said you moved from New York to Amsterdam, but we're gonna that's the main conversation today, that you were born in St. Maarten.
Yes, I was.
And wow. And what age did you move from St. Maarten to Amsterdam?
Yeah, when I was 18, I moved to Amsterdam to further my studies, and then after 4 years, I moved to New York.
Wow.
Yeah.
And we were talking early on before the recording, and when I went to Curacao, that's when I recognized how much meant, like, the relationship between Amsterdam and countries like St. Maarten, Curacao, Aruba. And it seems like, as I was saying to you, a lot of students literally leave islands like Curacao, St. Maarten, and then go to Amsterdam. Why is that?
Well, there's more educational institutions in Amsterdam. And in St. Maarten, for example, we do have universities, but they're all American. But even though it's a Dutch island and a French island, they're all American, and they're more expensive one. So most of us, to garner that international experience and leaving home, we go to Europe, and the Netherlands is one of the most sought after places to study because one, we're entitled to the same education as Dutch citizens. So we go to school most often for free or at a discounted tuition. So it's cheaper for us economically to go to the Netherlands and study. And in the cases for Aruba and Curacao, it's the same, but they do have Dutch universities as well, but the studies are limited. So often people do go away, obtain the degree, and go back home. Some of us do stay overseas, but majority do return back home.
Wow, that is actually pretty dope, right? Because and it's intriguing to me as a Vincentian born, and I don't think and I'm drawing relations to the colonizers. Let's go there. there. And their contribution to, I guess, the development of the countries they colonized. And what I've recognized is the English colonized countries like St. Vincent. I don't know if we necessarily have that relationship. And I know we're independent, but we're still part of the Commonwealth. But it's not something that I necessarily have heard from most English speakers or English speaking countries in the Caribbean, but it's very different for the Dutch countries.
Yeah, and it's a big thing. So it's like it's a whole process. So people start applying in January, you get a response in May, and then by the end of June, it's like a whole ceremony at the airport where all the students that are leaving with their family is there, the press is there. It's a big thing for us. So people do look. Yes, it's a big thing. And when you arrive in the Netherlands, it's like a whole welcome package. They welcome you at a hotel. Then they put you on different buses, and you go and live your life. And they have your room set up. They have everything for you. So it's
Wow.
a so the local governments of St. Martin and Aruba, Curacao, they pay for your tickets and they give you
Mm-hmm.
money for furniture and stuff like that. And then the Dutch government pays for your tuition, your educational tuition, and they disperse money every month into your account. So it's a good thing. I feel privileged, to be honest, to be a Dutch
Wow.
citizen. I don't have I have nothing bad really to say about the educational system of the Netherlands. It's pretty good.
Wow. And you should. I mean, that sounds like a pretty good
Mhm.
deal if you ask me, right?
Yeah.
Like both countries are literally contributing
Mhm.
to your development as a person.
Yes.
That is pretty dope. I mean, wow. So to our English speaking, the UK, St. Vincent, all these countries, I think there needs to, yeah, y'all got to step it up because this is not okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So you moved to Amsterdam. How long were you in Amsterdam?
4 years.
For, mm-hmm.
Yeah, 4 years. I did my 4 year study and I was out like fast, ASAP, because I'm an island guy coming from
Mm.
Caribbean, and the weather in Amsterdam, can be gloomy, gray skies for like weeks and weeks, and it's cold, and that was not my vibe at all.
Wow. Wow.
But
And so why New York?
well, I wanted, like, when I returned back to the islands, I'm like, I'm not ready for this. I think I'm ready for the world. That's what I
Mm,
wanted to experience. After living in Amsterdam, I love the fast pace. I love the big city life, and I just wasn't ready to be back home. So I sat down and I thought, I was like, where can I go? My grandfather, he's an American citizen, and he lived in the Bronx. I'm like, let me see
mm.
if I can get, you know, I'll visit him. And I did. And I fell in love with the city. And then I started the whole process for me to move to the US. And I fell in
Wow.
love with it. It has the four seasons, unlike Amsterdam. And I love the melting diversity of the city. Like,
Oh, wow.
amazing. Yeah.
No, you're certainly right, and I think to our listeners, as I said before, we are New York based. Young Black Travelers is New York based, so we are global in our scope. But so we push this city. I think New York is, as you said, a global city. I mean, I have everywhere you go. There's so many neighborhoods, and people are speaking. In their accents, and so you hear accents here. You hear an accent from me. You hear an accent from Jamaal. But I've always said this, it's easy because I moved to New York and the United States when I was, I think, 12, right? And so to most people, that's a time where, if I had moved somewhere else, I'm sure it would have been easy for this accent to completely go, though my accent is a mixed accent. But it's
Mhm.
easy to keep the accent because in New York, you're speaking to people and from Jamaica, St. Vincent, and they're speaking to you in their accent. So that's why I think it's a harder city for anyone to lose their cultural identity. In fact, I think living in New York, you gain a better cultural understanding than you probably would even at home, to be
Yeah,
quite frank.
100%. Agree. I agree. And when I visit other cities in the US, they don't hit like New York. And it's because of what you said. I felt welcome in New York. I felt like I can just be myself. I don't have to adapt. I don't hear often like, oh, where you from? I'm hearing an accent. Like wherever I go in the US, the first thing they ask is like, oh, where you're from? You're foreign, or say something. New York, it's like, all right, you're from here. We're cool. Sometimes people will ask you, but it's not as common and often and frequent as outside the States. And that's what I like. I can often, because of my accent, I feel uncomfortable when people ask me, oh, I hear an
Mm.
accent. I hear an accent too. I'll tell myself, American. I'm just from I don't get that. And I love that feeling.
That is true. That is true. Wow, wow. So before we go into the break, I guess the next question for you is: we know you're from St. Martin.
Mhm.
You grew up in St. Martin, but have you visited any other Caribbean island? And if you have, what is your favorite?
I have visited several Caribbean islands. I lived in Aruba for 8 years, from the age
Mm,
5 through 13. My parents were actually born there. It's also a Dutch island. So it's
wow.
extremely population within the six Dutch islands. I went there after the hurricane was destroyed. A hurricane destroyed St. Martin in 1950. And I liked Aruba, but it's not my favorite. My favorite is Jamaica. Love,
Okay.
yes, love the land, love the culture, love the people, and it just feels like home to me. Other than St. Martin, I still think St. Martin is number one. Not
Oh,
being biased.
wow. And I would say this, like your accent is closer to like it give me a Jamaican, even Vincentian vibe because they say Vincentian accent is very close to the Jamaican accent. So I
Yeah,
could see why you probably loved Jamaica. Wow, one love, one guan. That's good.
yeah.
Wait, so you said there are six Dutch islands. What are the six?
So it's the ABC Islands, which is Aruba, Bonaire, Curacao. They
Mm-hmm.
border Venezuela to the
Mm-hmm.
south. And then there's the Triple S Islands, which is St. Martin, Saba, and St. Eustatius. They are the northeast of the Caribbean, about 100 Puerto Rico. Yes.
So those two, Sabre and Sint
Well, the Dutch, well, how the Dutch call it is St. Eustatius, but we call it Statia as,
Stacia.
yeah, Statia. Yeah.
Those are the two islands I think I've missed, and I think a lot of people are missing when they're thinking about other islands because I remember hearing about, I think, Sabre sometime ago. And it was the first time I heard about it, and I still honestly don't know much about it. So, research.
Yes, it's rated the number one. Well, it's between Sabre and Bonnier. Every year they go between number one and two. For the best, I think they call it like Underworld or SeaWorld. So snorkeling is a
Mm,
snorkeling haven, and Sabre is just a volcano. It's about 8 miles from St. Martin. Statia is also a volcano, but it's land around it. But Sabre is unique because it's a volcano with about 1,500 residents, most of them being medical students from the U.S. But the diving experience is second to none. Nowhere else in the world has that experience. So they do stand
wow.
out. Yes.
Okay, so is it easy? So how do you get to Sabre and Statius? I think I
You
said that
have to
right.
be. St. Martin is actually a hub from like about 7, 8 islands in the region. So you have to land there and either take a boat or a short flight. It's like 15, 20 minute flight on one of those small planes. So
Wow. So I guess the tip here is when you go to St. Martin, do consider visiting probably one of these other two islands, which are two other countries. So two other
yeah.
stamps on your passport.
So
Wow. Okay.
including Anguilla and St. Bart's as well. They're 5 miles from St. Martin. So whenever I visit St. Martin, I do island hop. I do go to Anguilla more often than the other islands
Mm-hmm.
because it's quiet. The beaches are amazing, and I get some type of peace. And St. Bart's is, the bougie experience, but it's also fun to get away as well. The other two islands, they don't offer what Anguilla and St. Bart's offer, but they are unique. They offer
Wow.
hiking experience, and Statia, for example, you can hike the volcano and enter the volcano.
Mm.
And when you enter the volcano, it's just like a whole lot of fruits and it's cold inside. So that's a major attraction because you would never expect a volcano to be cold and producing mangoes and grapes and bananas. And the soil
Uh,
is beautiful.
Wow, that is pretty dope. Okay, so listen, as you've just received like rich information. Like literally the advice here is when you go to St. Martin, like maybe you should plan to like island hop as Jamal is saying. And I know it's been a question that many people have asked about island hopping in the Caribbean. And we know it may not be necessarily the cheapest to hop in the Caribbean, but it seemed like going around from St. Martin could be a good and cost effective way to see different islands. Wow. Well, listen, so we've just gotten to know a lot about Jamal. And so we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we are going to dive into the meat of this conversation and we're going to learn a lot more about St. Martin. So stay tuned. So welcome back. Welcome back. I know you have learned a lot. I mean, Jamal has dropped a lot of tidbits, nuggets. I mean, I'm leading this conversation, but I'm over here like really gleaning from the information. So hopefully, if you haven't listened, and if you're starting from right now, which you probably shouldn't be because you would have probably started the whole conversation from the beginning, but basically go back and literally take down notes of everything Jamal has said from the beginning. But we're gonna get into the meat of this conversation, and as we said, Jamal was born in St. Maarten. And St. Maarten is an island in the Caribbean that many Americans talk about, but I also know growing up in St. Vincent, a lot of Vincentians do talk about as well because it is one of the more developed Caribbean islands. And I think based on what Jamal talked about earlier on, we can get why it is extremely developed. It seemed like the Dutch contribution to the island is major, and therefore that leads to the development of the island. And even in developing the human capital, which is people like Jamal, it does obviously will help with development. But as we get into this conversation, what is a typical day like for a local in St. Martin?
Hmm. I would say it's definitely a hustle because for the size of the island, it's only 37 square miles and it's divided in two. So there's two of everything: two governments, two ports, two airports, two of everything. And they're kind of competing with each other, but not really, but sort of like indirectly.
Mm,
And the island also functions as a hub. So there's a lot of cargo and people that transfers through the island and then distributes whatever to the surrounding islands. And that's why I think St. Martin is a real hustle and bustle island for
mm,
locals. Everyone is after the dollar mainly. We have three currencies in St. Martin: the euro, which is used on the French side, the dollar, and the guilder. But the dollar is
Gilda.
most sought after. So
Mm,
it is a hustle type of environment. Tourism is major in St. Martin, and again, different type of tourism sectors, such as the cruise industry, their hotel industry, and the yachting industry as well. We're a major yachting hub for the Caribbean,
mm.
so money is there. People are
Of
hustling all
course, of
the time,
course.
and I think we're actually overdeveloped and we handle way more than we should because one, you
Mm,
see it in the traffic, especially on the Dutch side. The Dutch side has everything: casinos, um, clubs, prostitution establishments. You have everything. Whereas the
mm.
French side is very quiet. You can relax, so you get the best of both. However, the Dutch side is a little bit too congested because of the hustle and bustle, and everyone
Wow,
complains about it. So it's money. You're hustling and you're making money, and I
wow.
think that contributes to our development. The strong, mighty dollar.
The strong, and hopefully it stays the strong mighty dollar because
Yeah,
we are hearing the news of different countries dropping the dollar. And as an American, I want the dollar to remain strong.
yeah,
As travelers like yourself, we want that, right?
yeah.
So, wait, so I mean, you talked about the French and the Dutch side. And so just give the listeners a little understanding of the difference. And maybe you may need to get into history because do you need a passport to go to the French side and vice versa? Like, what are those differences?
Yeah. So, as an international traveler, you would enter the port of Princess Juliana Airport, airport
Mm-hmm.
code SXM. Yeah, yeah, because the French side has an airport as well, but
Mm-hmm.
flights mainly go to other French islands, including Guadeloupe, Embark, and Martinique. It's not an international airport. It's a small regional airport.
Wow.
So you enter from the Dutch side. Once you enter on the Dutch side, you're free to, well, technically, you can roam about on the French side as well. However, when you're in France, on the French side, you're in France.
Mm.
So you're in Europe, technically in Europe. The Dutch side, we're like a Puerto Rico, where we are part of the Dutch kingdom, but um, we have our own visas. We have our own prime minister. We have our own currency. So we don't have to adhere too much to the laws in Europe. Whereas the French side, it's just a mayor. They vote for the French president. They have the euro
Wow.
as their official currency. So all European laws do apply on the French side. So let's say a Jamaican enters the island from the Dutch side. Technically, they're not allowed to go on the French side, but if they do, they have to have like that stamp to show that we did enter legally. But
Mm,
they are allowed to pick you up. But Americans don't have that issue. Most people don't encounter that issues, but it do. It does happen now and then, and it becomes a big thing because everyone's like, "Well, I entered the island. Well, you did have a permit for the Dutch Caribbean, not Europe." So people need to be mindful of that, but you won't be incarcerated, but you can be pulled aside by the French officials if they decide to question you. Yeah. So,
wow.
but the borders are open.
Oh,
Ocean
wow.
borders, no tolls, no nothing. You see a sign saying "Welcome to St. Maarten" and "Bienvenue à Saint-Maarten," which is the French side. But there
Wow.
are restrictions. Yes.
That is really interesting, and I think as you're explaining that, a lot more questions come into my mind, right? And more so thinking from an American perspective and the issues that we are dealing with as it relates to the migration crisis. And in my head, and we would not get into that conversation. I'm like, I just see like that could be an easy way, right? If for migrant, right? Because to really claim access to Europe, but I'm sure there were some complexities there, but
Mhm.
that was honestly the thought that came into my head as you were talking about that.
Very much so, very much so. But again, it hardly happens, rarely happens where one is approached by the French officials and deported or arrested. But it can happen. But not if you're
Okay,
an American citizen, of course. You're free to roam
to
within.
roam about.
Yeah.
Okay, good. And so for families, let's start there. For family who may be looking for summer's coming up and they're looking for a summer vacation and even beyond the summer, maybe it's the winter time in the US and they want a quick getaway to St. Martin. What are some family friendly places and where would you recommend that families go in St. Martin?
Oh, I would recommend Lottery Farm. It's based on a French side. It's basically
Mm,
an eco lounge um, high up in the mountains. There's a pool. There's many restaurants. It's a sanctuary lounge basically,
mm,
and families do go there because there's a special segment for kids. There's a special segment for adults as well, and for adults rather, there's often like pool parties and stuff like that. You can zip line, you can
mm.
hike, you can do a whole lot there at Lottery Farm. But I like it more so like when I take my adult friends because we do
Mm.
have a really, really good time. You can rent cabanas. It's all luxury that's being offered at
Got
Lottery
you.
Farm, but not overpriced either.
Mm.
Another attraction I think is that I've witnessed family enjoy a lot in St. Martin is the Maho Beach experience, which is right behind the airport. People love
Yeah.
flying to that attraction to see the planes
Hmm.
land and take off at the
One
beach.
of the
And
reasons why I want to
yeah,
go.
it's amazing. It's amazing. I've been doing it from since I was a kid, which is why I wanted to become a pilot, but plans change. But people do go there often just for that because people do not believe like this exists. But also see a lot of families enjoying themselves there because there's a lot of like there's restaurants and bars, and just the experience is in itself is beautiful and magical.
Wow. Maho Beach. Okay. And so you've also, I think you've added some tips for, I guess, young people as well, because this will actually apply to young people as well.
Yes, yes. So St. Martin is, especially again, the Dutch side is a party city.
Hmm.
Yeah, party island for sure. There's clubs everywhere.
The Dutch
There's bars
side.
everywhere. There's lounges. There's prostitution establishments is legal there.
Mm-hmm.
And to drink is 18 and up. So for those 18 or under 21 travelers from the US, you're
Mm-hmm.
more than welcome to party in St. Martin. And just
Wow.
the excursions, the day trips to other islands, the many events you can do on both sides of the islands, I think is on kind of like unlimited, to be honest. And for those that are more relaxed, French side would be the best option, and I do that often. At
Hmm.
night, I would be on the Dutch side, partying. On the daytime, I would be on the French side because it's too much
Wow.
going on.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that's actually a great to advice. If you just want to relax, take it easy, go to France. And if you
Yes.
want to party and gallivant, go to Amsterdam, go to the Netherlands, St. Maarten, right? So that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so, what are some of the beaches that you would recommend outside of Maho Beach?
Mhm.
What are other beaches that you would recommend that travelers go to see?
Mullet Bay Beach, which is not too far from Maho Beach, probably like 5 minutes drive.
Mm.
Um, but that's considered like the local beach. Most of us grew up going there. It's
Mm-hmm.
one of the most beautiful beaches on the Dutch side. But another beach I would recommend is Orient Bay Beach.
Orient
It's
Bay, okay.
beautiful. It also has a nude beach section. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
which is popular amongst older travelers. But what I love
Mm-hmm.
about Orient Bay Beach is the amount of restaurants that are on the beach. And they're all, again, they offer luxury, they offer an experience, but it's not too expensive. It's
Mm.
like Ibiza in the Caribbean, which is what St. Bart's is known for.
Oh,
But St.
really?
Bart's is nice and all, but it doesn't have as many options as St. Martin. And another beach I would recommend is um, the beach in Phillipsburg, Great Bay Beach, because
Okay.
it's a boardwalk lined with restaurants, at least 60 to 80 restaurants, and they're from cuisines from all over the world, which is another thing St. Martin is known for. We are
Mm-hmm.
called the culinary capital of the Caribbean because you get food from everywhere. There's a lot of
Wow.
restaurants. Yeah, we are also the melting pot of the Caribbean, boasting over 150 nationalities. No
Wow.
island in the Caribbean has more nationalities than St. Martin. It's a melting pot, which is why I chose Amsterdam, which is why I chose New York. I like diversity and inclusivity. So,
That I didn't know that. That's
yeah.
another great tip. I did not know that St. Martin was a melting pot of the Caribbean, but it makes sense, right? Because as I said, growing up, I St. Martin is one of the Caribbean islands that I knew a lot about, right? And interestingly, to a lot of Americans, people would think that Vincentians or people in the Caribbean talk a lot about Jamaica. I didn't know much about Jamaica, right? But I knew a lot more about St. Martin, probably because my uncle was sailing and all of these things. So it just made sense to me. But yeah, it just makes sense that it is the melting pot of the Caribbean because a lot more people do know about it, and you guys seem extremely welcoming. Yeah, so that's good to know. And so, how can travelers get around? Like, what are the ways to get around the island? Because there's a French side and there's a Dutch side. And is driving easy? Do people rent cars? Like, how do people get around the island?
Yeah, most people rent cars or ATVs. Some take the dollar bus,
Mm,
which is like these small vans that can hold up to like 25 people.
okay.
And there is public transport between the two sides of the islands. Uh,
Okay.
from the Dutch capital to the French capital mainly, and then to different parts of the French side from the Dutch side. So public transport is not an issue, except after certain hours. I would say after 8:30 becomes a little tricky. But then you have taxis that are available. Uber isn't available or Lyft either. So no. Uh,
It's actually not in any Caribbean island I know of.
right. And but I would recommend folks to rent a car because
Okay.
there's so much to see in St. Martin. As you mentioned, it is a very developed island,
Mm-hmm.
so there's a lot to see. I think if you stay in the Simpson Bay area, Simpson Bay Maho area, you probably won't need a car, but I would still recommend it. However,
Hmm.
again, if you want to reach to the French side, you would have to drive or take a cab because the French side does have a lot to offer, but it's
Got you.
just so different. Like
Hmm.
it's as soon as you cross the border, everything is in French, and the people speak French. It looks different as well. Same thing when
Hmm.
you cross the border on the Dutch side, everything isn't in Dutch. It's so much more Americanized, but yeah, but you can get a whole lot. So a car would be the best way.
Wow.
Mhm.
This conversation is causing me to want to go and do a lot of research on St. Martin, because like when you're talking about how different the island look from the French to the Dutch side, and it just causes questions. I guess what was happening back then? Like how were they decided to like develop the islands? I guess
Yeah,
were they not working together? But
yeah,
so much
yeah.
questions.
Borders were open, and the story is when they divided the islands, the Dutchman walked with beer, and the Frenchman walked with wine, and that's how he covered more of the area. Well, the land. The French side is bigger than the Dutch side, but the Dutch side's economy and
Hmm.
everything else is bigger than the French side. The Dutch side is way more developed and advanced.
Wow, wow. Okay. And and so what would you say, what are some foods that you would recommend travelers partake in, eat when they get to St. Martin? I know it's an international island and we have influences from all over, so we probably may be able to get doubles from Trinidad and
So
all of these things, bacon shock. But what is a local?
local would be conchs and dumpling. That is a thing that we are known for.
Hunks and
Um,
dumpling, okay.
and chicken leg and Johnny cake is something that people like go to everywhere you go. You want something fast? Give me a chicken leg and Johnny cake. Real quick.
What do you guys call Johnny cake?
It's like I think the
Is it
Jamaicans
fried
call it,
bakes?
yeah, fried bakes. It's like the festival kind of, but the round ones.
Yeah,
So we
so we call it bakes. We call it bakes.
got it. Yeah,
Okay, so chicken leg and bakes, Johnny cake. Okay.
as well. But chicken leg is the most common. Is what we mainly pair it with. Chicken leg.
Chicken
No,
leg, not chicken wings.
no, chicken leg. Oh, chicken
Wow.
Johnny cake.
Wow, chicken leg and Johnny cake. That is so interesting because I think growing up in St. Vincent, we, going to school, people would get bakes and chicken wing, usually chicken wing, but you
Right.
guys do chicken leg and Johnny cake. Okay. And so, what are some other foods?
Um, so kongs is one, chicken leg and Johnny cake. Also, another common bite I would say is chicken leg and gouda cheese. Gouda, I think in is a Dutch cheese, but I think in English they would say Gouda,
Oh,
Gouda,
Gouda. Oh,
but
wow.
it's Gouda. It's named after,
Gouda.
yeah, it's named after a city in the Netherlands. That is something people go to for breakfast, like easily. It's just like Johnny cake and cheese, please. But usually it's with Gouda cheese. But you can add American cheese if you want to. What else?
Wow.
Yeah. We are known for seafood, obviously. It's the Caribbean. I
Hmm.
think lobsters, the way we do it is quite unique on the grill versus the American way of boiling and then adding butter. I don't eat it like that. It has to
Ah,
be grilled. Um, what else is
okay.
known for? I would say those are like the three top foods in Saint Martin.
Wow.
Yeah.
So chicken legs, Johnny cake and Gouda cheese.
Oh, that's
And
fantastic. I love it.
Gouda. And then lobster, lobster with grilled lobster.
Yeah. And then constant dumpling.
Hunks and dumpling.
So
Good, good. All right, so listeners, when you go to St. Martin, make sure you taste or try to get these four dishes. So don't go and ask for fries and chicken. Make sure you're getting the Johnny cake and chicken leg. Make sure you're getting the bakes or Johnny cake and Gouda cheese. Make sure you're getting the constant dumpling. When you say dumpling, you mean because I know
the
Jamaicans
the the,
call. Go
the ones
ahead.
that roll in like you put in soup and stuff, the soft dumplings.
Okay, yes. That's what we call dumpling as well. I think, not a lot of Jamaicans have confused a lot of what I call things. So,
Indeed,
okay, we
indeed.
call it the same thing. So, dumpling. Okay, wow. So, these are actually honestly some really good dishes that I definitely would want to try. And the lobster, when I went to Zanzibar last summer, actually they do the lobster the same way.
Mhm.
They grill the lobster, and it was. I think I was saying to my friends there, I've had lobster here, and I remember having lobster in Maine, and I did not like it. Right, it wasn't a thing. Maybe it's exact as you said. It's probably generally boiled,
Yeah.
but they grilled it, and the flavors were just like it was so good. It
Yes.
just tastes. It was really good.
Yes. Yes.
Good.
That's how we do it.
Okay, good. Well, so we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we are going to get into the end. And as we do, we shout out a guest, friend of our guest, and we're just going to end this conversation, wrap everything up. And so thank you, Jamaal, for being here with us, and stay tuned as we wrap this entire conversation up. Wow, so welcome back. We are at the tail end of this conversation. Again, we have Jamaal. I'm going to try to say your last name again. Don't kill me, but Pantoflet.
Flat, yes.
Pantoflet. Jamaal with us again. Jamaal was born in St.Maarten. Jamaal studied in Amsterdam. Jamaal lives in New York. I mean, talk about be it global. This is the representation of a global citizen right here. And we know, and from my experience going to Curacao, I just know that they are a very diverse group of people. And we'll get into a little bit more of that. So, but let's get into the shout out of our podcast. And so on all of our episodes, we shout out and we try to shout out someone that our guests may know, someone who follows the YBT blog, someone who follows our podcast, someone who is engaged in our community. And on this podcast episode, we are going to take time to shout out a friend of Jamaal and a follower of his, I know, on Instagram, and his name is Demetrius Global. Again, a fellow traveler, another traveler, have amazing pictures on his page. So if you want inspiration, if you want travel inspiration, you should head on over to Jamaal's page, and he's going to drop his Instagram a little bit later on. But you should also go over to Demetrius's page, and his Instagram handle is Demetrius, Demetrius Global, Global. And you will get, I know his page definitely will inspire you. So head on over there and check him out if you just need some inspiration as to where to go. Yes, Jamaal. So I guess before we go into the game, well, we usually play a game on our podcast. We usually play this or that, but you're going to get a new game that we're going to be introducing. But before we go there, the question for you is: do you speak Dutch?
Yes, I do. Dutch is my first language, followed by, I would say, English. But I think English is overtaking Dutch because I don't speak it as often since I moved to the US. I speak Dutch, English, some French, Papiamento, Spanish, and Afrikaans. Those are languages that I speak.
Wow. And let me say this. I think this is the trend for most Dutch colonies, or how do you guys classify them? Is it colonies?
No, we're called partners now within the Dutch kingdom. We don't.
Partners.
The word colony is a bad word.
Okay, so for most Dutch partners, the common trend is a few languages, because in Curacao they definitely spoke minimum 5 languages. But the one that you said that I thought was a little bit shocking was Afrikaans. Now tell us that story.
So Afrikaans is, as you know, spoken in South Africa. But how we learned it is because I would say it's like 60% Dutch, but they do teach us that as well. So the Dutch educational system, you learn 3 languages every day. It's a minimum. So English and Dutch daily, and then a 3rd language. And that's from the first year in high school straight through college. You cannot drop
3 languages a day.
Every day. And Martin and Aruba and Curacao, those are the big Dutch islands. And they are also melting pots because there was an economic boom in Aruba and Curacao, the oil boom back in the days. And St. Maarten had a tourism boom. So people from all over the region flocked to these islands. And again, when there's elections, it's not even half of the population can vote because it's mainly foreigners. So that's how we pick up on a lot of languages, because your neighbor is Haitian or French or whatever, some from somewhere. And we don't even need school to learn the languages, because again, it's a true melting pot, and it's very, very small and to me overpopulated. And it's the same in Aruba and Curacao. So you learn something, you definitely will pick up on a language. So most people where I'm from speak minimum 3 to 4 languages.
Wow. And you said that you had spent 3 months in South Africa?
Yeah, recently. I wanted to get away from the US. I felt it was giving ghetto vibes.
The ghetto vibes.
So right after the election, I was like, I'm going to vote. And then after the election, I was out. I was out November 17th, and I came back February 12th, which meant I also made a stop in Jordan on my way back here.
Okay.
But there,
wow.
And living my best life, it was a magical experience. But that's
wow,
another time.
That's another story, another podcast. Wow. And did you fly Royal Air Morocco? No, not Royal Air Morocco. Air Jordan?
Air Jordan, I did.
Okay. You see, as travelers, you got to know the airlines. Okay. Wow, that's cool. That's cool. So let's get into this game. We were just talking about airlines and, as I said, based on him saying he stopped in Jordan, clear understanding that the airline he probably would have flown must have been Royal Air Jordan. I keep thinking more Royal Air Morocco and connecting them to their very different, two different parts of the world, Middle East and Africa. But I guess we are going to test your knowledge, Jamaal, of airports, So I guess it's guess the airport code, right? These should be easy for you because these are New York airports.
Okay.
So, well, the first few should be easy for you. So let's guess these. LGA.
LaGuardia.
LaGuardia. So LaGuardia is an airport in New York. We'll break them down a little bit later on. JFK.
John F. Kennedy in New York.
John F. Kennedy. And EWR.
Newark Airport in New Jersey.
Newark Airport in New Jersey. So, okay, we'll get back to those a little bit later on. Now, this one, you should know this. AMM.
Amman.
Yeah. All right, good. And where's Amman?
That's in Jordan. That's the capital of Jordan.
Good.
Yeah.
And this last one, hopefully you get this one. Because I did look at your page and I think you went here, so this shouldn't be far. GRU.
GRU. I know it. Wait. GRU.
GRU. South America.
Wait, I know it. 1 second. Trying to bring. No. Panama? No.
No. Okay, so let me help you out.
I know the name.
Brazil.
Oh, Sao Paulo. No?
Sao Paulo Airport, yes. And I think I have problems saying it. I think it's called Guarulhos.
Yes.
Something along that line. So, all right. So Jamaal got a few of them right. Guarulhos was his challenge. But okay, so you are in New York. You live in New York now, so you're a New Yorker.
Yeah.
And have you flown out of all 3 New York area airport? Because I don't consider one of them a New York airport, by the way.
Yeah, I have flown all 3. Yeah.
3. Which one would you rate as probably the best? JFK.
Yeah.
And what's your experience at LaGuardia?
Now it's better that they are renovating, creating new terminals. It's much better now. I like using LaGuardia, but you can't take international trips from LaGuardia. So,
correct.
JFK is my favorite.
Got you. And by the way, guys, if you're ever flying into New York, LaGuardia now, I know years ago, LaGuardia was, it was bad. It was not pleasant to fly through. Like you felt depressed going through LaGuardia. But now it is a beautiful airport. So if you're considering taking trips from New York into other states, I think it may go to, some Caribbean islands.
Yeah.
LaGuardia is something you should, an airport you should definitely consider. And how about Newark?
Rundown. I don't like it. I don't care. They need to invest in revamping Newark.
Okay. I certainly agree with you. Newark, EWR. And so the reason why you listen to these podcasts is to get tips. And I know when you're booking your tickets, you're probably going to see New York area airport, or you're going to see Newark there. I'm telling you, if you're not staying probably in Manhattan, maybe in the Bronx, Newark is not necessarily convenient to get to, right? And it is also not I didn't find it a beautiful experience. So as Jamaal said, it's also run down.
Yes.
But you pick your poison. JFK all day.
Yes.
And I guess our last question for you is, what is your favorite, activity to do here in New York as a New Yorker?
I love the parks in the summer. New York, in the summer, I don't think there's any place better than New York, to be honest. I love how empty the city becomes. I love that all the students and the business folks leave and open up to New York. I love the parks. I love the free concerts. I love the food. I love the different festivals. I mean, it is New York. Pick up yourself, it's so much to do. But the best time is summertime.
I agree. Summer in New York, you're right. I echo your thoughts exactly. Summers in New York is the best. And, winter can be a little bit droggy sometimes. And, you have to find that motivation to go out. And even though there are things to do, you have to motivate yourself, obviously. But summers, there's something everywhere. I mean, every block.
Stuff like that. It's beautiful.
Yeah, so definitely this summer, make your way to New York City if you have not considered it. There's a lot to do. There's a lot of festival. There's a lot of markets, the night market. There's also Smorgasburg that now happens at Prospect Park, and then also in Williamsburg. A lot that you definitely can do. So definitely check out New York this summer. But Jamaal, I want to thank you for joining us for today's podcast recording and today's conversation. Do you want to leave your Instagram handle or a way for our listeners to reach out to you if they need anything, any questions?
Yes. Well, first of all, let me start by saying thank you for this platform and everything that you're doing.
You're welcome.
Reach out and, the reposting of pictures and just highlighting young Black travelers. I commend you for that initiative.
Thank you.
And the podcast, please allow me to share your podcast and just let the world know that you do exist. I love what you're doing, and just highlighting Black young travelers, I think it's a beautiful thing. My Instagram
Thank you.
My Instagram is Jamaal P. So JAMAAL P as in Peter, or Pantoflet, my last name. And please feel free to DM me if you have any questions. I do have some contacts here and here that I can make happen, especially in Jordan. But I can't say it over here because certain things are loud, but you can get things done, I guess. Just who you know. It's easier when you know folks that's based in the country. So thank you.
Good. Wow. So listen, y'all heard it here. Definitely reach out to Jamaal if you're particularly thinking about Jordan. And Jamaal, I'm probably going to, I'm going to reach out to you because I'm actually considering, my summer plans, and I'm thinking a Israel-Jordan merge. So, we'll talk. We'll talk. And so, Jamaal, again, I want to say thank you for joining us. Thank you for the wealth of knowledge that you have imparted on our listeners. There was just a lot of nuggets, as I said, that you dropped, and a lot of information that I know as travelers, if you listen and you take the advice, it will definitely help you on your journeys. But I also want to remind you, our listeners, that Young Black Travelers is a listener-supported podcast. So head on over to our website, youngblacktravelers.com, and you can go on over to our Anchor page and click the support button and leave a donation for Young Black Travelers. Also, remember to follow us on all of our social media platforms. We're on Facebook at Young Black Travelers. We're on Instagram at Young Black Travelers Blog. We're on Twitter at YBT Blog. And again, our website, youngblacktravelers.com, where after this conversation is done and we upload it, you will see a lot more information, pictures based on what we've talked about today. We also want to remind you that even though we're coming out of a pandemic, we want you to keep the practices that we have learned throughout this time so we can keep our world open so you can continue to explore and have amazing experiences just like our friend Jamaal has had. So again, we want to say thank you, Jamaal, and everyone, thank you for joining us today and have a wonderful day. Adios.